Yes.
Fantastic.
Oh, sorry. Thank you so much for speaking to me.
Of course.
Beautiful performance.
Oh, thank you.
Wonderful that you've
Thank
given.
you.
We got to talk about that season finale of, oh, it was heavy. But what I loved about this was how meticulous it looked like. You put thought into every movement and every action. We know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
But can you talk about that final? It felt like he knew he was going to die that day.
Yeah.
Was it trying to hold on to the moment or just savoring those moments that he has left?
Yeah, I think it's both. And I think you put it so beautifully because, knowing and understanding what is coming,
Mm.
and then trying to expand that time that's left, you know what I mean? And making sure, because I think Malcolm had a sense of what was coming next for him, not just in the assassination, but also beyond, you know what I mean? He had that spiritual dimension. And so it's the transition that he's trying to understand. And so feeling the tangible, real things around him, the relationships that he has, the connection he has to Elise, and trying to savor it is the right way to put it, and also almost collect it to keep it in his spirit as he makes that transition, and to pay attention to things. And because that's what Malcolm did best, was to pay attention and understand, and let things live within himself, so that he could move forward. So knowing that transition was coming, making sure that he had those things that in his spirit that he needed to make that transition and be strong for it.
Right. There was a moment where Malcolm reached for the holster, the
Yeah.
gun that wasn't there. And we didn't know at first that it wasn't there. But I was kind of interesting about that because Malcolm knew that the gun wasn't there, but yet he reached. Was that a moment of regret?
No, it's different actually, because the gun
Okay.
is there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But he makes that decision not to pull it. You
Okay.
understand? So it's like that moment where, and that's where his whole life almost crashes into itself, because there was a time in his life that it wouldn't have been a second thought.
Right.
Somebody pulled on him, he's right on it. You know what I mean? He's going to be quickest on it. But in this moment in his life, with everything that's led up to it and all of the change and all of the growth that he's had in his life, it stops him. And also the presence of his family, his girls are there, you know what I mean? His wife is there. And understanding that a bloodbath is a devastation, not just for him and his family, but also for the community. And making the decision to take what was coming without causing harm to somebody else,
Right.
without deliberately causing somebody else's pain or death. That, to me, is the moment where Malcolm really becomes Malcolm as we understand it, because he's made an active choice, to take suffering onto himself rather than inflict it on other people. And that, it's hard. It's sometimes hard to understand, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because the instinct to self-protection obviously is the strongest we have. But his instinct was to protect himself, his family, and his community by not bringing violence on somebody else.
So then, is there forgiveness within death?
I think so. Yeah. I think so. Partly because he understands his spiritual reward.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So he's not worried about what happens next. And the space to forgive that spirituality offers, is something that Malcolm fully understood. So it's basically saying, I don't need to be this person that I used to be. I don't need to be the kind of person that people expect me to be. I can be that embodiment of spirit that I'm trying to be.
Now, what is interesting is the relationship between Malcolm and Bumpy.
Yeah.
We have the protection element there. I did come across true friends, but I was wondering, someone who's trying to better the community and have this spiritual awareness, the fact that he is friends with someone who you could argue is a destruction, plays a part in the destruction of the community.
Yeah.
How do you rationalize seeing the person, but also what they do? Because it has effects.
Yeah. It's hard. And it's he just can't shake it because, you know, his relationship with Bumpy is part of what created him.
Mhm.
And even as he makes that decision to grow into something different, he can't avoid the fact that without Bumpy, he wouldn't have been in a position to make that transition and to grow. And so there's, you know, you talk about forgiveness, which I think is right on when it comes to Bumpy as well, is that thing where, you know, Malcolm understands that Bumpy has been his guide. Even if it's been in the wrong direction, he's still been his guide. And without that guidance, he wouldn't have understood how to make the turn into spirituality, into leaving that behind. So
Right.
it's, you know, and it's family too, you know what I mean? We all have, you know, that one or two people in our family or even in our friends where we're like, I'm not going to let that person go, even though I know it might get me in trouble, it might do this, but you don't let them go because it's blood or because it's something else that binds you together. And also because of the, you know, Bumpy does good in the community too. And so trying to balance that, you know what I mean? Because Malcolm understands education is important. There's Bumpy helping people with education. You know, he's helping people be housed. You know what I mean? Like he's putting a roof over people's head, putting food in people's mouths. And so Malcolm says, you know, man, like obviously I want to see Bumpy go in a different direction, but also I appreciate the power that he has within the community to do good. So it's a constant conflict, you know, but
Right.
also he just loves the man, you know, and he can't let him go, you know.
In a way, I was wondering at the end, you know, Bumpy says that he couldn't save him, and that was one of his big
Yeah,
regrets. And he has this scene. I was wondering, in a way, does it feel that Malcolm wished he could have saved Bumpy
yeah,
from the life that he led?
yeah. I think so. I think Malcolm would have given up his life if he could just have saved Bumpy. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And yeah, that scene, you talk about that scene, it tears me up, you know what I mean? And I was like trying to be still. And I'm like, listening, I'm like, it still gets me, you know what I mean? Because that's the whole story of their relationship. And, you know, all Bumpy wants to do is save his friend, you know, and here's Malcolm saying, nah, I don't want that kind of saving, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to save my life to lose it, you know, as they say. Um, but yeah, yeah, he wants to save Bumpy, but also realizes Bumpy is a man in full. He's his own man and he makes his own decisions, just like Malcolm has, you know. And there'll be regrets, I think, you know, if you could speak after death, there'd be regrets from Malcolm, you know, about choices that he made.
Mhm.
Um, you know, there's always regrets left. But if the full balance of it is positive, then you hold on to it. And I think, you know, for Malcolm, the presence of Bumpy in his life, on balance, is a positive.
Right. There is, there was, we know from previously that the bombing happened from Brother Clyde. We
Yeah.
also know the fallout from Brother Omar.
Hmm.
I was wondering, and even with Brother Omar's situation, he doesn't completely turn his back on him.
Hmm. Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. I mean, I think because it's almost like he recognizes that there are things that are in motion and that have to happen. And for Brother Omar not being 100% sure, I mean, he does trust him, of course he does, because he has to, he doesn't have a choice. But he also understands that if that turns, that it's okay,
Mhm.
that he does it with his mind fully open because he recognizes that there are weaknesses in people, that there are decisions that people make that you know they will come to regret later on once they understand the full picture of it. But he looks at people around him and he says, if somebody says to me that they're with me in spirit, that they're with me on this path, um, then I'll accept them. I'll bring them in, even if it turns out that they betray the things that I believe in. And I think Malcolm was willing to have people around him that may betray him because he understood ultimately that if he is living an honest life and living in a way that he feels is spiritually full and correct, that what happens is meant to be, you know, and he's not going to turn somebody away just because he's not 100% sure. And he says, if this man comes to me and says that he's with me, and he says he's my brother, then I'm going to open the door, you know?
Do you feel that the quest for enlightenment or betterment cause blind spots.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, sometimes it's over your whole eyes. You know what I
Right.
mean? Yeah. I mean, we know that from our own lives that, sometimes it flies in the face of everything we see. It's like, I see something with my own eyes, but then somebody else is telling me that's a mirage, that's not real. Then that's the tension, you know what I mean? And sometimes faith can completely just blind us, but they do call it blind faith, but you know what I mean? Like, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not good, because the blind spots can also cause harm to other people. And, ultimately, any faith that allows you to cause harm to other people is not really, for me, worth,
Right.
worth pursuing. So yeah, I think you're right.
So final question would be, as an actor, what has this role given to you so that you can go in your toolbox for the next project and recall from?
Yeah, patience, absolute patience, and investigation in a different way. Like we, as actors, we often think of ourselves as the instrument, you know what I mean? And we sort of go inside a little bit and we say, oh, I want my voice to sound like this, or but this role has taught me, I think, and particularly working with the actors that I worked with, is that you actually don't have to do very much.
Mm.
If you're listening and watching somebody do incredible things and connect in an incredible way, then you really just let it happen. You let the writers and the producers and the cinematography and all of those things tell the story, and you just exist.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for speaking
Thank
to
you. I
me.
appreciate it. Yes.
Wonderful performance. Beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.